Welcome to Bethel.
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 Welcome to Bethel Baptist Church.
Welcome to Bethel.
Well, welcome back to another Pilgrim's Progress. Last week we left Christian. He was struggling to climb the hill of difficulty, and he slept too long, if you remember, and he got himself in all sorts of problems. But in the end, he passed safely through the lion, seeing that Jesus was in charge, and he got to this palace called Beautiful. And on the door was a porter, someone called Watchful. And we're just going to pause this week how Christian got into that palace, because it's really important, because in that palace he's going to see some amazingly beautiful things, but they're only going to mean what they should mean and be beautiful if he gets in properly. So it's a bit different this week, a little bit shorter, but it's because it's setting us up for something amazing at the end and going into next week. I've had to actually change some of the pictures as well, just to help us, because these pictures aren't quite right. So you'll see Porter, Watchful, sat down with Christian. Now, these pictures say it's inside, but in John Bunyan's book, it's outside the palace. Watchful actually questions Christian, and we'll see why it's important that it's outside later. Anyway, let's get into the story. Watchful asks Christian, "What is your name?" And he says, "Well, my name now is Christian, but my name used to be graceless, used to be helpless." "Where do you come from?" Watchful said. "I've come from the city of destruction, and I'm going to Mount Zion. And I was hoping that I could stay here in this beautiful palace tonight." Watchful said, "Why are you so late?" Christian hesitated with that one. Should he admit that he struggled up the hill of difficulty? Well, he did. He said, "Oh, I'm a wretched man. I slept in that nice place halfway up the hill, that arbour, that window. I was stupid. I slept when I shouldn't have, and that's why I'm so late. I realise I'm late. I should have come earlier, but I slipped up." Well, Watchful seemed happy with the answer that Christian had given, but he said, "I'm going to call someone else. I'm going to call out one of the virgins from this palace, and if she likes what she hears, she will welcome you into the family." So he called out, "Discretion!" In came Discretion. Watchful handed her the notes he'd been taking from what Christian had said. And she asked him similar questions. She asked him where Christian had come from, where he was going. So he said, "I come from the city of destruction, go into the celestial city." She asked him questions about what he'd seen on his way, and he told her some of the things that he'd seen on the way, his journey here. His name, and he said again, "I was graceless, I was helpless, but now I'm a Christian." And the more he talked, the more Discretion liked Christian's answers and what she heard. And he looked carefully. Christian looked at Discretion and saw that she smiled, but she also had tears in her eyes as she listened to Christian's story. She rang this bell suddenly, ding, 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 ding. She said, I'm going to gather 3 more of the family. And they shook hands with him, and discretion introduced them. They were prudence, piety, and charity. Discretion said, oh, it's great to see you, Christian. The Lord of the hill has built this palace to help pilgrims on their way to the celestial city. Said, you must be tired. Come and sit down. Come and sit down at this table. Have something to drink. Supper isn't ready yet. But while we're waiting, can we ask you some questions? Prudence, piety, and charity all wanted to ask Christian all sorts of questions. So they chatted for ages while they were waiting for supper. They were getting hungrier and hungrier. But they were hungry to know what Christian had done, what he'd seen on his journey. So piety went first. They sat down at the table. Piety went first. Can you tell us some stuff to help us and encourage us, to really cheer us up and really make us happy? Why did you become a pilgrim? Why did you become a traveller? Well, Christian said it was because I read in this book that I lived in the city of destruction, and that was all that was waiting in that city, was for it to be destroyed. It wasn't going to be life, it was going to be death. And that really stirred me up, got me sad, and I felt this burden on my back, this rucksack on my back, and I couldn't shake it. I knew I had to leave, but I didn't know what to do. Piety said, well, how did you actually leave? How did you start on your journey? And Christian remembered back to Evangelist, how Evangelist pointed him in the right direction, told him where to go. Piety said, oh, that's great. Did you see the interpreter's house? And Christian said, yes, I went in there. That was amazing. He showed me how Jesus keeps his work going in my heart, even though the devil tries to stop it. Piety said, did you see that guy in the iron cage? Yes, Christian said, it was so sad to see that he didn't seem to have any hope. And then there was the guy with the future judgment. I saw some amazing things in Interpreter's House that helped me on my journey. What else did you see? Piety asked. Tell us. Well, Christian finally got to that place of deliverance, the cross, and he explained to them. For the first time, he explained, like, as he looked at the cross, it's like, he said, I saw this man dying for my sin, for my burden, my rucksack. And as I looked at him and realised what he'd done, my rucksack rolled off my back into the grave, and I've never seen it since. Prudence then took over, and she wanted to ask Christian some questions. Did you ever think of your home, your country that you left? Christian said, I do think of the city of destruction, but it's not the same. I don't love it anymore. I used to love living there, but I realised it was dangerous to live there. So I do remember it, but when I remember it with a different attitude now, in a different way. I don't enjoy thinking about it. I don't enjoy thinking about the life I used to live there and what I used to do and say and think there. I realised the way I used to live was dangerous. So when I look at it now, I look back and I hate it. I'm like, why did I say those things? Why did I do those things? Oh, they were so wrong. They were all against the king. Prudence asked him another question. Have you ever gone wrong on your journey since you started? Christian, with tears in his eyes and with pain in his heart, he said, yes, I have. I saw sloth, simple and presumption. I thought, how could they sleep all that time? But I've fallen into the same danger I slept before I reached this amazing palace. I've been wrong. And Prudence said, well, how do you put things right? What gives you encouragement? What makes you happy when you realise you've gone wrong? And Christian said, oh, these amazing things. I always remember that cross that I saw in that place of deliverance. And that helps me to realise no matter what I've done wrong, the Lord of Celestial City has died so I can be forgiven. Then I look at these new clothes he's given me. I realise he's made me a new person. He's given me his clothes to wear. I belong to him now. And there's this scroll in my pocket now which tells me, every time I read the scroll, it tells me that I belong to him. And that brings me amazing help and comfort. And I also look forward to the place I'm going, to the Celestial City. Prudence asked, why are you so excited about going to the Celestial City? What do you hope you're going to see there? And Christian said, I know I'm going to see the one who died for my sin. The one who died to take the burden, the rucksack off my back. I'm going to see him not dead, not a grave, but I'm going to see him alive and well. And he's going to be shining and filling that place with all his glory and goodness. And it's going to be incredible. I can't wait to get there. Charity then took over. She asked some questions. Why do you come here alone? Do you have a family? Don't you love them? Christian said, yeah, I have a wife and some small children. He remembered them and he loved them. Charity asked, why didn't you bring them with you? That question made Christian so upset. He started crying. He said, I would have loved to have brought them with me. But none of them believed my words. My wife, she thought I was crazy. She loved the city of destruction more than the Lord of Celestial City. My children just thought I was stupid, thought I was crazy. Charity said, do you think the words that you tried to persuade them with didn't really have any effect because the life you lived was so bad? Christian said, I did fail them so much, but I tried to talk to them about going to the Celestial City, about the Lord of that place, and I tried to do what was right. And they chatted and chatted about all sorts of things for hours and hours until the sun started to go down, and then supper was ready. And Christian was led to this incredible table, and on that table was all sorts of food, incredible rich food, and lovely wine, tasting wine, so rich and sweet. And they started to eat and drink, and all the chatting and all the talking around the table was about one person. Christian felt so refreshed, so revived. He got stronger and stronger and stronger the more he ate and drank. And all the talk around that table was about the Lord, the King of that country, the Lord of the Celestial City. And Prudence, Charity, and Piety all loved to talk about him, loved to remember what an incredible warrior this Lord and King was, that he laid down his own life and he fought for all the pilgrims of the land. He died to rescue them from death, to bring them life. And now he feeds them, making them strong for the journey ahead. Maybe for one of the first times in our story, they ate and drank until late in the evening, and it was an incredible time. Well, we're going to look back over today's story and see some of the things that Jesus wants us to learn. So this Palace Beautiful is the church. Now, it's not a building as such, not made with bricks anyway, like our church building. But this palace, where loads of beautiful things are seen and heard, is Jesus' family, the church, all the different Christians gathered together. And it's important that Watchful gave Christian an interview outside this palace, outside the church first of all. It's really important because Christian has met all sorts of people who looked like Christians on their journey but actually turned out not to be. And you might think, why did Watchful ask Christian so many questions? Why does he want to know his name? Why does he want to know where he came from? Why does he want to know where he's going to? Because all the things inside the palace are only for those who've really trusted in the Lord. Things that we do together in church only give us strength and only help us if we've really trusted in Jesus. Otherwise they're going to do us no good. Remember mistrust and timorous, fearful? They ran away because of the lions. And all those trials exposed them. They weren't really trusting in Jesus, and that can be the same for us. So he wants to hear a bit of testimony. And maybe you've heard someone give their testimony in church. It's their story, what their life was like before they knew Jesus, maybe what their name, what they were like as a person, and then when they met Jesus and how he changed them and how he's taken them from journeying to hell to now journeying to heaven. So it's really important that that has happened in our lives before we come into church. Otherwise all the stuff in church is going to seem really strange and it won't feed us. It'll actually work against us in that sense. So that's why Watchful passes on the notes to discretion. Discretion is like seeing clearly, and she asks Christian some more questions to check out if he's genuine, to check out if he's real. And she's really happy with his answers, that he's honest, that he is still failing, but he relies on Jesus so much. And she welcomes Christian into the family. And it's so important that we feel a welcome into church family if we are genuine, if we have trusted in Jesus, if we have been born again. And look at discretion. She has tears in her eyes. Like she recognizes the genuine marks of what it means to be a Christian, that yes, you are a sinner, but Jesus has died for you and that you've trusted in him. And she remembers that herself, and she's so encouraged by seeing Christian. And then there's these three: prudence, piety and charity, or cautious wisdom, spiritual devotion and love. So these three are at work in the church. When you come into church family, then you realize these amazing things are at work, and they're pictured by these three ladies, and they ask Christian all these questions because they want to be encouraged and excited by how Jesus has helped Christian. I don't know if you've heard a testimony in church, you've seen a new Christian, someone who's just trusted in Jesus. When they start telling their story, you'll see other Christians with tears in their eyes because they're just so happy that Jesus has saved someone else. And we can help each other in church by our own different stories of how we've come to know Jesus. Like if you look around in church, there's people from all sorts of different backgrounds, and they've done all sorts of different sins, but Jesus has died for them all the same, and they've been forgiven. And it's an amazing experience to hear someone else's testimony, someone else's story as a Christian. It can bring us such happiness and joy, and it can make us so excited to see how Jesus has worked. And that's why they're full of questions, because each one of us can help each other by sharing how Jesus has helped us and comforted us. And Christian really benefits. He's so happy by prudence and pieties and charity, by wisdom and spiritual devotion, and loves questions to him. They're helped by him. He's helped by them. Church is an amazing place. And this supper that they get to have in the end is like communion. Communion in church is so important because we remember Jesus. Remember, the only person they chatted about was the Lord. And communion is an absolute feast. We have bread and we have juice, but it's an absolute feast because it helps us to remember what Jesus has done for us. And through us taking communion rightly by trusting in Jesus, it's an absolute feast. He meets us. He strengthens us with his help and his power. And remembering all the things that Jesus has done for us is an absolute feast, that he's died for our sins. He spilt his own blood to wash us clean on the inside. That he's given us his Spirit to help us, to strengthen us, to feed us with his life, to give us all the help we need on our journey. And every time we take communion, every time we feast on communion as a church, we're meant to be given strength by Jesus for the journey ahead. Have you really believed in Jesus? Is there a place in church family for you? He wants to welcome you in, and there's such a feast waiting for you in church. To belong to a church, to belong to Jesus' family is so, so important. And as we gather together as a church at the end of lockdown, you're going to see all sorts of amazing things and join with Jesus' family. You'll be able to feast on him if you've trusted in him. Don't be put off by the sorts of questions that other Christians might ask you. Why are you so excited? Why do you want to go to heaven? Have you really believed in Jesus? Have you been born again? Have you trusted in him? They only ask because they don't want you to miss out on the feast that's in Jesus. You can come amongst God's family, but if you're not really part of it, you'll miss out on all that Jesus has to give. So don't be put off by questions that Jesus might ask you, that others in the church might ask you. They want you to share in this amazing banquet, in the love of Jesus, the deep love that he has for you. Well, we're going to carry on looking at how amazing church is next time. But here's some things you can do. Psalm 45 and Revelation. How does Jesus see his church? Proverbs 8 and Ephesians. Who do you find at work in the church? Why is that good? What are you a part of by joining the church? Why is belonging as a church member so important? We need to answer that question. And then Luke 22 and John 6. Why do we need to celebrate communion? What does Jesus do through communion? And then add this beautiful palace onto your map with prudence, piety and charity there. And then look through the Bible, what amazing things happen in church when Christians gather together. God speaks is one of them. Just think about that. And it's only in church that happens. So it's so important to believe and trust in Jesus and join a local church. See you next time.